Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in for this week's segment of Ask a Rabbi. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have, although this is not Stump the Rabbi, so I ask that you please either email me your questions or place them in the chat to be considered for future segments. Today, I'm going to tackle the Jewish star. Well, not literally tackle it, but try to understand the history of it and why it is such an important symbol in Judaism and Jewish life. How did it become the most universally recognized symbol of Judaism? Well, the six-pointed star, known as the hexagram, here's the sample for you to look at, has a long and varied history, but its connection to Judaism is much newer than one would think. If I asked you how many years the Jewish star has been associated with Judaism, you might say 500 years, 1,000 years. You might try to figure out when the Bible was written, where it exists in the Torah. Well, you wouldn't find it in any of those places because the Jewish star has only been associated with Jewishness for the last 200 years or so. Surprised? When I talk to non-Jewish groups about Judaism and when I meet with them in one of our prayer spaces, when that's allowed, they are always surprised by the lack of Jewish stars in the decoration of the prayer space. But the reason is simple. The star is truly not our most historical symbol. What is? The menorah, the seven-branch menorah that served as the primary Jewish symbol from antiquity until the post-Renaissance. Now, this is a version that's found in front of the Knesset building in Jerusalem, but it has the seven branches. Don't forget that the menorah is a generic term. It can be the seven-branch candelabra, or it can be the nine-branch candelabra that we use for Hanukkah. So the menorah was really the main symbol for a very long time. It was incorporated into the building of the temple, and it shows up in many other places as well, including in our own Temple Emmanuel logo. But back to the star. The earliest known Jewish uses of the hexagram was first as a seal in ancient Palestine in 6th century before the Common Era, and then in 8 centuries later in a synagogue frieze in Capernaum. But these early uses of the hexagram may have been only ornamental designs. Ironically, a swastika, another popular ancient motif, appears alongside the hexagram, alongside the star in the frieze on the synagogue wall. In the Middle Ages, hexagrams appeared frequently in churches, but rarely in synagogues. That menorah again. Scholars have attempted to trace the Star of David back to King David himself, and then to Rabbi Akiba in the Bar Kokhba rebellion, because Kokhba means star, or even to the Kabbalists in the 16th century, especially Rabbi Isaac Luria, but no Jewish literature or Jewish artifacts document this claim. Other legends try to connect the symbol with the seal of Solomon, the magical signet ring used by King Solomon to control demons and spirits. His original ring was inscribed with the sacred four-letter name of God, but amulets that later imitated this seal substituted either the six-point star, the hexagram, or the pentagram, the five-pointed star. And it's this five-pointed star that has become associated with King Solomon. But in addition to such legends about Solomon, medieval Jewish magic textbooks talk of a magic shield possessed by King David, which protected him from his enemies. Perhaps this is where the Hebrew name comes from. We think of this as the Jewish star, but in Hebrew it's known as Magen David, literally the shield of David. So perhaps it was on his shield. We don't really know. We can only guess. Nonetheless, the hexagram might have been connected to David because he was the ancestor of the Messiah. It has become a messianic symbol, and many Jews celebrate it as such. In Germany in the 17th century, Jews would light a special star-shaped brass oil lamp on Shabbat because Shabbat is thought to be a foretaste of the Messianic era. The hexagram was also popular among the followers of Shabtai Tzvi, a false Messiah in the 17th century, but someone considered perhaps to be the Messiah nonetheless. So among Jewish mystics and wonder workers, the hexagram was most commonly thought of as a magical protection against demons, often inscribed on mezuzot and amulets. But as we move towards modern history, we see the star beginning to take on a Jewish identity. In 1354, Emperor Charles IV of Prague granted the Jews of his city the privilege of displaying their own flag on state occasions. Their flag had a six-pointed star in the center of it. And a similar flag remains to this day in that country in one of the oldest synagogues we have. It's from Prague that the star likely spread to Moravia and Bohemia and then eventually to Eastern Europe. In 17th century Vienna, the Jewish quarter was separated from the Christian quarter by a boundary stone inscribed with the hexagram on one side and a cross on the other. This perhaps was the first instance of a star being used to represent Judaism, not just an individual and not just a community. When Jewish emancipation followed the French Revolution, Jews began to look for a symbol to represent themselves, and they were looking for something comparable to the cross used by their Christian neighbors. They settled upon the six-pointed star. Why? It's ironic, not because it has any religious connections or any textual basis, but because it has neither of those. They were looking for a secular object that would define their community, regardless of what and who they were, simply that they were Jews. That is precisely what led Theodor Herzl to choose it as a symbol for the new Zionist movement, and why in time it appeared in the center of the flag of the new Jewish state of Israel and has become associated with national redemption. Of course, there are times when the Jewish star has been used against us. We know from our not too distant history, our most recent history, that the Nazis chose the yellow star as an identifying badge required on the garments of all Jews. But its negative impact on us did not last for long. After the war, the star turned from a symbol of humiliation and death into a badge of honor that we wear proudly. What does the Jewish star symbolize? There are many interpretations. One that resonates with me was advanced by the philosopher Franz Rosenzweig, who noted the two interlocking triangles, the corners of one representing creation, revelation, and redemption, the corners of the other representing humanity, the world, and God, each an essential part of Judaism, together in one symbol. Today, the Star of David is the most popular and universally recognized symbol of Judaism and the Jewish people, incorporated into jewelry designs and found on Judaica ritual objects. It is a symbol of our pride and joy, our Jewish community.